The wind screamed across the frozen mountains like a wounded wolf. Snow whipped through the air so fiercely that even the tallest pine trees bent beneath its power. Thick grey clouds swallowed the afternoon sun, leaving the land wrapped in a cold blue shadow. Every path leading toward the mighty Silver Crest Pack had become almost impossible to travel. Yet one lonely figure kept walking. His back was bent with age. His clothes were little more than torn rags stitched together countless times. A weathered wooden staff trembled in his hand with every step, and a heavy sack rested across his shoulders. Snow had settled into his silver beard, making him appear even older than he truly looked. Each breath escaped his lips in white clouds. Each step seemed slower than the last. From a distance, he looked like nothing more than another starving wanderer searching for shelter before the storm claimed another life. But appearances often told the greatest lies. Hidden beneath layers of ancient magic was a man feared by every alpha across the northern kingdoms. Alpha King Kael, the strongest wolf alive. The ruler whose name alone could silence entire armies. Yet today, no one would bow. No one would kneel. Because today, he was only a beggar. Kael slowly lifted his eyes toward the enormous stone walls rising ahead. Silver Crest, one of the richest and most respected packs in the north. Its banners danced proudly in the freezing wind. A silver wolf surrounded by a golden moon. Below the banner, carved into the giant wooden gates, were words every visitor could read before entering. Strength through honor. Mercy for all. No wolf left behind. Kael studied the words for a long moment. Then a quiet smile touched his lips. A beautiful promise, he whispered to himself. But promises are easy. The heart. That is much harder to test. Months earlier, rumors had reached his royal palace. Travelers, merchants, even wandering healers. All told different stories. Some claimed Silver Crest was paradise. Others whispered of starving omegas. Of children left hungry. Of corrupt leaders hiding behind polished speeches. Kael had heard enough. He refused to judge from rumors alone. So he made a decision no king before him had ever dared make. He would disappear. No guards. No crown. No royal escort. No one would know his face. He wanted to discover one simple truth. How would wolves treat someone who could give them absolutely nothing? That answer would reveal everything. The heavy gates finally came into view. Two enormous guards stood watch beside them. Both wore polished silver armor. Warm fur cloaks rested across their shoulders. They laughed together while drinking hot cider beside a glowing fire. Neither noticed the old traveler until his footsteps crunched across the snow. One guard looked up. His cheerful smile disappeared instantly. What do you want? Kael bowed his head respectfully. Good evening. My journey has been long. I only ask for shelter until morning. The second guard burst into laughter. Shelter. He looked the old man up and down with disgust. You smell like you've slept with wolves. The first guard wrinkled his nose. No. You'll scare away decent people. Kael remained calm. I can sleep in a stable. The guards exchanged amused looks. In our stables. One laughed so hard he nearly dropped his cup. Our horses eat better than you. The other shoved Kael's shoulder. Move along, old man. We don't keep trash inside Silver Crest. Kael stumbled backward. His staff barely stopped him from falling. Around them, villagers began gathering near the gate after returning from the marketplace. Several paused to watch. No one stepped forward. No one spoke. Instead, many smiled. A wealthy merchant carrying bags of fresh bread frowned at the beggar. Keep him outside. My customers don't need to see filth. A noblewoman covered her daughter's eyes. Don't look. Work hard, or you'll become like him. A group of young warriors laughed openly. One tossed a tiny pebble. It struck Kael's boot. Another followed. Then another. The boys laughed louder. Dance, old man. You look colder than winter itself. Kael lowered his gaze. Not because the stones hurt, but because each face quietly entered his memory. Every laugh. Every insult. Every pair of eyes that watched suffering without compassion. He remembered them all. High above the gate stood enormous banners celebrating the coming winter festival. Children had painted cheerful pictures across colorful cloth. One banner read, "Kindness makes every wolf strong." Kael looked from the banner to the laughing crowd below. The difference between words and truth had never seemed greater. The first guard sighed impatiently. "I've had enough." He grabbed Kael roughly by the arm. "You heard us. Leave." Kael looked into the young warrior's eyes. "So, this pack has no room for an old traveler." The guard answered without hesitation. "Not unless you can pay." "I have no coin." "Then freeze." The guard shoved him toward the snowy road. Gasps escaped from a few villagers. Not because they pitied the old man, but because they enjoyed the spectacle. Someone chuckled. Someone whispered, "He's too weak to survive tonight." Another answered, "Then tomorrow the wolves can clean the road." Laughter spread once again. Kael slowly steadied himself. His old bones appeared to shake beneath the cold wind. Inside, his alpha wolf growled with silent fury. Years of battle had taught him something valuable. Power meant nothing without patience. Today, he would keep watching. As he turned away from the gate, movement caught his attention. Far down the snowy path, someone struggled beneath an enormous bundle of firewood. The load looked almost too heavy for its owner. Step by step, she climbed the icy hill. Her boots were worn. Her cloak had been patched so many times that its original color had almost disappeared. Snow clung to her dark hair. Her cheeks were red from the freezing wind. She looked exhausted. Yet she kept walking. Several nobles passed beside her riding beautiful horses. None offered help. One woman even frowned. "Move aside. You'll dirty the road." The young Omega quietly stepped off the path without complaint. She lowered her eyes, waited for the horses to pass, then continued climbing. Kael watched carefully. There was no anger on her face, only quiet determination. The bundle suddenly slipped. Logs scattered across the frozen ground. Several rolled directly into the road. The young woman hurried after them before passing wagons crushed the wood. She gathered each log carefully. Her fingers had turned bright red from the cold. Nearby villagers noticed. No one helped. Instead, a butcher laughed. "Maybe if you weren't so weak, Omega, you could carry your own firewood." Another man smirked. "She should be grateful. At least she has work." The Omega simply nodded politely. "I'm sorry." She picked up another log. And another. Kael frowned. She apologized for struggling alone. After gathering every piece, she finally looked toward the gates. Her eyes drifted across the crowd. Then, they landed on him. The old beggar standing alone in the snow. Unlike everyone else, she didn't wrinkle her nose. She didn't laugh. She didn't turn away. Instead, sadness filled her gentle eyes. Real sadness. Not pity born from pride, but pain born from understanding. She knew what loneliness looked like, because she lived with it every day. One of the guards noticed where she was looking. "Keep walking, Lira. Unless you want to join him." Several villagers laughed again. "Lira always finds the hopeless cases." Another whispered, "That's because she's won herself." The young Omega remained silent. She adjusted the heavy bundle on her back. Then, to everyone's surprise, she slowly walked toward the old beggar. The guard stared in disbelief. "What are you doing?" Lira stopped a few feet away from Kael. For a moment, neither spoke. Snow continued falling between them. The old man's hands trembled from the cold. Lira looked down. She reached into the small cloth pouch hanging from her belt. After searching for several seconds, she found a tiny piece of dried fruit, probably the only food she had carried for herself all day. Without hesitation, she held it out. "You look hungry." Her voice was soft, gentle. "I'm sorry. It's not much." Kael stared at the tiny piece of fruit resting in her freezing hand. He had walked through kingdoms, visited countless packs, met thousands of wolves. Many had offered him gold while knowing he was king. Many had praised him while hoping for favors. But this was different. She believed he was nothing. She expected nothing. Yet she still chose kindness. Kael slowly accepted the fruit. "Thank you." Lira smiled. A simple smile. Warm enough to challenge the bitter winter. "My mother used to say, no one should face the snow alone." The word struck Kael harder than any sword ever had. He looked into her eyes. There was no fear. No greed. Only compassion. For the first time since beginning his journey, the Alpha King felt something unexpected. Hope. Perhaps. The rumors were not entirely true. Perhaps. Somewhere inside this broken pack, one pure heart still remained. As Lira adjusted the firewood once more and quietly continued toward her tiny home beyond the village, Kael watched her disappear into the falling snow. He whispered so softly that only the wind could hear. "Who are you? And why are you the only one who remembered what kindness truly means?" Behind the walls of Silver Crest, hidden eyes were already watching. And before another sunrise, the mysterious beggar's arrival would begin changing the fate of the entire kingdom. The cold wind followed Lira all the way home. Her boots sank into fresh snow with every tired step, leaving behind a lonely trail that disappeared beneath the endless white storm. The bundle of firewood weighed heavily on her shoulders, but she never complained. She simply adjusted the ropes cutting into her coat and kept walking. Behind her, the great walls of Silver Crest stood tall and proud. Ahead of her, only silence. The rich wolves lived safely inside the warm village. The poor were left to survive on its frozen edges. Lira belonged to the second world. Her tiny cabin stood alone near the dark forest, where few wolves ever visited unless they wanted cheap labor or someone to blame for their problems. Its wooden walls leaned slightly to one side. The roof had been patched so many times that snow still slipped through tiny cracks. Smoke barely rose from the crooked chimney. It wasn't much, but it was home. As soon as Lira pushed open the creaking door, a small voice burst through the room. "Lira." Tiny footsteps rushed across the worn wooden floor. A little wolf pup with messy brown hair threw his arms around her waist. "You came back." Lira smiled despite her exhaustion. "I promised I would." Finn hugged her tighter. "I was scared." The wind sounded angry today. Lira gently brushed the snow from his hair. "The wind always sounds louder when you're alone." "But you're not alone anymore." Finn looked up with bright innocent eyes. "Never." She smiled. "Never." The little boy finally let go and helped untie the firewood from her back. Together they stacked the logs beside the fireplace. Only a few glowing embers remained. The room was freezing. Finn rubbed his hands together. "I tried to keep the fire alive." "You did your best." She placed another log inside. Soon gentle flames flickered once more. Warm orange light filled the tiny cabin. For a brief moment, it almost felt peaceful. Lira quietly opened the old kitchen cupboard. It took only seconds to see how empty it had become. One cracked bowl. A little salt. Half a jar of dried herbs. Nothing else. She reached into a small cloth bag hanging from the wall. One round loaf of bread. Small. Dry. Barely enough for one person. Finn noticed immediately. He looked away. "I'm not hungry." Lira laughed softly. "You've been saying that since yesterday." "I'm serious. My stomach isn't growling anymore." "That's because it's already empty." The little pup lowered his head. "I don't want you to go hungry." Lira gently knelt before him. She placed both hands on his tiny shoulders. "Finn. What did we promise?" He sighed. "We always share." "Exactly." She broke the loaf carefully. Half for him. Half for herself. The pieces were painfully small. Still, she smiled as though it were a grand feast. Finn accepted his piece slowly. "You always make the smaller half look bigger." Lira winked. "That's my secret magic." He giggled. For a few precious seconds. The cold outside disappeared. As they ate beside the fire, Finn suddenly spoke. Do you think Alpha King Kael is really as strong as everyone says? Lira smiled. I've never met him. They say he defeated 3 rogue packs alone. So the hunters say. They also say he can tell if someone is lying just by looking at them. Lira chuckled. Stories become bigger every winter. Finn stared into the fire. I wish he would come here. Why? So he could make everyone stop being mean to you. The smile slowly faded from Lyra's face. She reached over and gently touched Finn's cheek. Not every problem needs a king. Sometimes. Kindness changes more hearts than fear. Finn frowned. But kindness doesn't stop bullies. Lira looked toward the dancing fire. No, it doesn't. But if we stop being kind, then they win. The little boy thought quietly about her words. He still didn't fully understand. But he trusted her more than anyone. A sudden gust of icy wind pushed against the cabin walls. The bucket beside the door tipped over. Lira stood. I forgot the water. Finn looked outside through the tiny window. It's getting dark. I'll be quick. You should take the blanket. You stay warm. Before leaving, she wrapped Finn in the old blanket instead. You need it more. What about you? She smiled. I'll race the cold. Outside. The storm had grown even stronger. Snowflakes swirled through the forest like white spirits dancing between the trees. Lira carried the empty bucket toward the frozen stream. Everything felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. Then, she noticed something lying beside the path. At first, she thought it was a fallen tree. But as she stepped closer, her heart stopped. The old beggar. The same man from the village gate. He had collapsed beside a large rock. His hands were trembling violently. Snow covered his shoulders. His breathing was slow. Painfully slow. Lira immediately dropped the bucket. Oh no. She hurried toward him. Sir. His eyes slowly opened. He looked weak. I suppose. He forced a faint smile. The snow finally caught me. Lira gently helped him sit against the rock. You're freezing. It's only a little cold. She shook her head. No. This is dangerous. Kael secretly watched her through half-closed eyes. He wanted to see what she would do. Would she leave? Would she offer sympathy and continue home? Would she fear helping a stranger? Instead, she immediately removed her worn gloves. She placed them over his shaking hands. They're still warm. He looked surprised. And what about you? She smiled softly. My hands will survive. Kael noticed something. Her own fingers were already blue from the cold. Yet, she never hesitated. He had tested countless wolves across many kingdoms. Almost everyone helped only when helping cost them nothing. Lira was different. Helping always cost her something. And she always paid willingly. She looked around the snowy forest. My cabin isn't far. You should come. Kael slowly shook his head. I couldn't trouble you. You wouldn't. I have nothing to give. Lira almost looked confused. I'm not asking for payment. The words settled deep inside Kael's heart. 4 years. Kings. Nobles. Generals. Everyone expected something in return. Power. Gold. Influence. Lira expected none of it. She reached into the small cloth bag hanging from her side. Only one piece of bread remained. Her own dinner. She looked at it for only a second. Then, she placed it into the old man's hands. Kael stared silently. No. You should keep this. She smiled. You need it more. You haven't eaten. I'll manage. You'll go hungry. She laughed gently. I've gone hungry before. But I couldn't sleep knowing someone else froze beside the road. Kael looked down at the bread resting in his weathered palms. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't warm. It wasn't even fresh. Yet, no royal banquet had ever carried greater value. This was sacrifice. Pure. Quiet. Without witnesses. Without reward. Without expectation. Lira noticed the wind becoming stronger. Without another word, she untied the only thick blanket wrapped around her shoulders. It was old. Threadbare. Covered with patches. Still, it was the warmest thing she owned. She carefully placed it around the old man's shoulders. There. You'll feel warmer. Kael immediately protested. You'll freeze. She smiled again. I still have my coat. The coat itself was barely enough against the weather. But she never mentioned that. For several seconds, neither spoke. Snow drifted gently between them. Finally Kael asked quietly, why? She blinked. Why what? Why help someone you've never met? Lira looked toward the snow-covered trees. My mother once told me something. Kael listened carefully. She said, the easiest time to forget kindness is when life becomes hard. If we stop caring because we're hurting, then pain spreads forever. She looked back at him. I don't want to spread pain. I'd rather spread hope. The Alpha King felt his chest tighten. Those simple words carried more wisdom than speeches made inside royal halls. Back inside the palace, many powerful wolves spoke beautifully. They talked about honor, justice, duty, compassion. Yet those words often disappeared when no one was watching. Lira lived those words. Even alone. Even hungry. Even freezing. A tiny smile appeared beneath Kael's beard. Perhaps his long journey had not been meaningless. Perhaps he had finally found someone worthy of every story whispered about true greatness. Not a warrior. Not a noble. Not a queen. An Omega. The poorest wolf in the kingdom. Lira helped him stand. Can you walk? I think so. Lean on me. He secretly laughed inside. The strongest alpha alive. Pretending to lean on the smallest Omega. If his royal guards could see him now, they would faint. Yet strangely, he didn't mind. Not at all. As they slowly walked toward the lonely cabin together, hidden eyes watched from the shadows of the forest. A hooded spy lowered his telescope. The beggar. His with the Omega again. The spy disappeared into the darkness. Only one destination awaited him. Luna Selene's manor. And before dawn, the acting Luna would hear a report that would awaken dangerous suspicion. Because in her eyes, no worthless Omega deserved the attention of any mysterious stranger. Least of all, one whose quiet presence carried the weight of destiny. The next morning, the snowstorm finally began to fade. Golden sunlight slowly pushed through the heavy clouds, covering the frozen land with a soft silver glow. From a distance, Silver Crest looked peaceful again. Smoke curled from warm chimneys. Merchants reopened their shops. Children laughed as they chased each other across the village square. To anyone passing by, it seemed like the perfect pack. But Alpha King Kael had already seen enough to know that appearances could deceive. Standing outside Lira's tiny cabin, still wearing the face of an old beggar, he quietly watched as she swept fresh snow away from the front steps. She looked exhausted. Dark circles rested beneath her gentle eyes. Her fingers were red from the freezing cold. Yet when Finn stepped outside carrying 2 wooden cups filled with warm herbal tea, Lira smiled as though she had not a single burden in the world. Careful, she laughed. It's hot. Finn carefully handed 1 cup to the old traveler. This one's yours, Grandpa. Kael looked down at the little boy. Grandpa. Finn grinned proudly. You remind me of one. Kael chuckled. I've never been called that before. I like it. The little pup beamed. Lira shook her head, smiling. He gives everyone a new name. Finn looked offended. They have to earn it. Kael laughed quietly. I see. For a brief moment, the tiny cabin felt warmer than the largest palace. No grand dining hall. No royal feast. No expensive furniture. Only kindness. Kael had spent his life surrounded by luxury. Yet this humble home held something his palace often lacked: peace. After breakfast, Lira prepared to leave for work. She wrapped another worn scarf around Finn's neck. "Stay inside. I'll only be gone until sunset." Finn frowned. "You'll come back. Always. You promise?" "I promise." The little pup hugged her tightly before she picked up her basket. Kael quietly watched. There was no blood connecting them. No family name. Yet the love between them was stronger than many royal families he had known. As Lira disappeared toward the village, Kael remained behind. Finn looked up. "Will you stay? If you don't mind." The boy smiled. "I don't." Several hours later, Kael continued his secret mission. Leaving the cabin, he slowly made his way into Silver Crest once again. This time, he would visit every corner of the village. Not as a king, but as someone everyone believed was worthless. His first stop was the largest bakery. Fresh bread filled the air with its warm, comforting smell. Golden loaves covered every shelf. Customers laughed while servants carried baskets overflowing with pastries. Kael slowly approached the counter. "Excuse me. I haven't eaten. May I have one small piece of bread?" The baker barely looked at him. "No. I can sweep your floor." "No. I can chop wood." "No." The baker finally pointed toward the door. "Beggars don't belong here." A customer laughed. "If you feed one, 10 more will appear." Another nodded. "Exactly." Kael quietly thanked them anyway before leaving. Not one person noticed the sadness hidden behind his tired eyes. His next stop was the healer's hall. Inside, shelves overflowed with herbs and medicine. Several assistants hurried between patients. Kael slowly entered. "My knees are swollen. I only ask for a little ointment." The healer frowned. "Do you have payment?" "No." "Then leave. I'll work afterward. We're not a charity." One assistant whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "He'll probably die before sunset anyway." Laughter echoed through the room. Kael simply bowed. "Thank you for your honesty." He walked away. Another face. Another memory. Another name added to the silent list inside his mind. Near the marketplace, wealthy nobles gathered beneath colorful tents. Jewelry sparkled beneath the morning sun. Musicians played cheerful songs. The entire square overflowed with luxury. Kael approached one noblewoman. "My lady. I seek directions." She stepped backward. "Don't come closer. You'll stain my dress." A servant grabbed a broom. "Out." Before Kael could answer, the servant struck the ground near his feet. Dust and snow exploded into the air. Several children nearby burst into laughter. One little boy copied the adults. He picked up a pebble, then threw it. It struck Kael's shoulder. "Go away." The other children joined him. More stones followed. Small ones. Not enough to injure. Just enough to humiliate. Kael remained still. He looked not at the children, but at their parents. None stopped them. Some even smiled proudly. Children learned cruelty. From someone. Meanwhile, across the village, Lira spent her day carrying water between homes. She earned only a few copper coins for hours of hard work. As she crossed the village square, she noticed an elderly wolf struggling to carry heavy sacks of grain. Several strong warriors walked past without slowing. One merchant frowned impatiently. "Move faster." The old wolf nearly fell. Without hesitation, Lira placed down her own bucket. "Let me help." The elder smiled weakly. "You've already worked enough. I still have strength." Together they carried the grain safely home. The old wolf reached into his pocket. "I can pay you." Lira gently shook her head. "You already thanked me." His eyes filled with tears. "There are still good wolves." She simply smiled. "There's good in everyone." Kael had quietly watched the entire moment from across the street. Again. No audience. No reward. No praise. Only kindness. He whispered to himself. She doesn't know I'm watching. She truly lives this way. Later that afternoon, Lira noticed a flock of tiny winter birds trapped beneath a broken fishing net. Children nearby laughed as the frightened birds desperately flapped their wings. Instead of continuing toward her next job, Lira knelt in the snow. Easy. I won't hurt you. Her fingers carefully untangled each frightened bird. One by one, they flew into the bright sky. Finn would have smiled if he'd seen it. Kael smiled instead. As the sun slowly lowered across the snowy mountains, Lira made her final stop near the river. There she found two frightened wolf pups hiding beneath an old bridge. Both shivered from the cold. Their father had not returned from hunting. They're hungry, one whispered. Lira looked into her nearly empty basket. Only one apple remained. It was supposed to be tonight's dinner. She looked at it. Then at the children. Without hesitation, she handed them the apple. The older pup looked surprised. But what about you? She smiled. I'll eat tomorrow. The younger child hugged her tightly. Thank you. As the children happily shared the apple, Kael stood hidden behind a snow-covered tree. He closed his eyes. He had watched nobles donate gold only when crowds applauded. He had watched warriors boast about protecting the weak. He had watched leaders preach honor. None of it matched this single quiet act. Lira wasn't trying to become respected. She simply couldn't ignore suffering. Her kindness was not something she performed. It was who she was. That evening, Kael slowly returned toward the cabin. The cold wind carried voices through the trees. He immediately stopped walking. Someone was nearby. Hidden. Watching. Two cloaked figures stood behind thick pines overlooking Lira's home. One lowered a spyglass. So it's true. The beggar stays here. The second crossed his arms. Lady Selene won't like this. No. But she'll want answers. Keep watching. If the old fool leaves, follow him. The spies disappeared into the forest without realizing another pair of eyes had already found them. Kael's expression hardened. His wolf stirred beneath the disguise. So, the acting Luna had finally taken interest. Good. That meant the next part of his test was about to begin. Inside her luxurious manor, Luna Selene listened silently as the spies delivered their report. A beggar. She frowned. And an omega. The first spy nodded. Every night. They eat together. They speak for hours. Selene slowly rose from her chair. Her beautiful face remained calm. But her eyes grew colder. No ordinary beggar survives 3 nights in this weather. She walked toward the window overlooking the village. There is something strange about him. She turned back toward her guards. I want to know everything. Who he is. Where he came from. And why. Her voice became dangerously quiet. He keeps choosing that worthless omega. The guards bowed. At once, my lady. Selene stared toward the dark forest. For reasons she couldn't explain. The sight of that poor girl suddenly filled her with unease. And deep inside, jealousy had already begun to grow. The following morning, an uneasy silence settled over Silver Crest. The cheerful sounds of the marketplace were still there. Merchants opened their stalls. Children chased one another through the snowy streets. Smoke curled from warm chimneys. But beneath that ordinary morning, something had changed. Invisible eyes were watching. From the balcony of the Grand Luna Manor, Selene stood wrapped in an elegant white fur cloak. A steaming cup rested in her hand as she stared toward the edge of the village. The Omega lives there? She asked quietly. One of her spies bowed. Yes, my lady. And the beggar? He spent the entire night inside her cabin. Selene's fingers tightened around the cup. No ordinary beggar survives a blizzard. There is something unusual about him. The second spy stepped forward. We followed him yesterday. He begged from merchants. He visited the healer. He asked nobles for bread. He never became angry. Selene narrowed her eyes. A starving old man who never loses his temper. She slowly smiled. No, that isn't weakness. That's patience. She turned toward her captain. I want every movement watched. If he speaks to anyone, I want names. If he leaves the village, follow him. And if that Omega becomes involved. Her smile disappeared. Don't let her out of your sight. The guards bowed together. As you command. At the lonely cabin, Finn happily chased snowflakes outside while Lira washed clothes beside the frozen stream. The old beggar quietly repaired a broken wooden chair near the doorway. Lira noticed him working. You didn't have to fix that. Kael smiled. I've repaired worse. It was falling apart. So am I. She laughed softly. No, I think you're stronger than you look. Kael paused for a moment. If only she knew. His hands had defeated monsters twice the size of ordinary wolves. His roar had once stopped an entire battlefield. Yet hearing those gentle words somehow meant more than endless praise from his generals. Finn suddenly ran over carrying a tiny wooden wolf carved from an old branch. Look. I made this. Kael accepted the little carving. It's beautiful. Finn scratched his head. It's supposed to be a brave wolf. But I couldn't make the ears right. Kael carefully took a small knife from his pocket. May I? Finn nodded excitedly. Within moments, the rough carving became smooth and lifelike. The tiny wolf almost seemed ready to leap from the wood. Finn's eyes grew wide. You're amazing. Lira looked surprised. You've done carving before. Kael chuckled. A very long time ago. He remembered sitting beside his own father as a young prince. Before battles. Before responsibility. Before loneliness. For the first time in years. Those memories no longer hurt. As the afternoon passed, Kael quietly helped around the cabin. He repaired loose roof shingles. Fixed a broken window frame. Sharpened the old axe. Stacked firewood. Lira watched him with concern. You've done enough. You should rest. He smiled. I've rested long enough. She laughed. I don't believe that. Finn whispered loudly. I think Grandpa likes working. Kael laughed. Perhaps I do. For a few precious hours. Life felt simple. Almost peaceful. But peace never lasted long. Across the village square, trouble had already begun. A wealthy merchant stood shouting at a young Omega servant. You dropped my flower. The frightened girl bowed repeatedly. I'm sorry. It was an accident. The merchant slapped the bag from her hands. White flour scattered across the snow. You worthless Omega. Nearby wolves stopped walking. Many watched. None intervened. At that moment, Lira arrived carrying fresh water. She immediately hurried forward. It wasn't her fault. The merchant glared. Did I ask for your opinion? The ice is slippery. Anyone could have fallen. The merchant stepped closer. So now beggars defend beggars. Several nobles nearby laughed. Lira quietly picked up the fallen bag. I'll help clean it. The merchant kicked the bag away. I don't want your help. I want compensation. The young servant began crying. I don't have any money. The merchant pointed toward her. Then she'll work for free until spring. Lira looked at the terrified girl. Then reached into her pocket. Only 4 tiny copper coins. Everything she had earned that day. She placed them into the merchant's hand. This is all I have. It should cover the loss. The merchant counted them. It's barely enough. It's everything. He looked from the coins to Lira's worn clothes. Then shrugged. Fine. He walked away. The servant stared at Lira. You didn't have to do that. Lira smiled. Yes. I did. The girl burst into tears. No one had ever stood up for her before. Hidden beneath the roof of a nearby shop. Kael had watched every second. Again. Lira sacrificed what little she possessed. Again. She asked for nothing. His respect continued growing. Later that afternoon, Kael wandered through the village alone. He intentionally chose the busiest streets. His disguise remained perfect. As expected, the insults returned. A butcher threw spoiled vegetables toward him. "Take these. They're fit for someone like you." Several young warriors laughed. One blocked his path. "Old man. Can you fight?" Kael smiled. "Not anymore." The warrior shoved him. "That's obvious." Another laughed. "Maybe we should teach him." Before anyone could move, a calm voice interrupted. "Leave him alone." Everyone turned. Lira. She stepped between the warriors and the old traveler. One warrior smirked. "Move." She didn't. "You heard me." "He hasn't hurt anyone." The warrior crossed his arms. "Or what?" Lira looked directly into his eyes. "I won't let him face this alone." For a brief second, the entire street became silent. No Omega, especially one as poor as Lira, had ever dared challenge trained warriors. The first wolf laughed loudly. "Listen to her. She thinks she's brave." Another sneered. "You're protecting trash." Lira remained calm. "No, I'm protecting someone. There is a difference." The warriors eventually walked away, still laughing. But Kael never forgot those words. She hadn't defended a beggar. She had defended a life. As evening settled over the forest, Kael and Lira slowly walked back toward the cabin together. The sky burned orange behind the snowy mountains. Finn ran ahead chasing rabbit tracks. For several minutes, neither adult spoke. Finally Kael broke the silence. "May I ask you something?" "Of course." "Have people always treated you this way?" She smiled sadly. "Mostly." "And yet, you still help them." Lira looked toward the fading sunset. "When I was little, my mother became sick. No healer would come. We were too poor." Kael quietly listened. "A traveler passed through our village. He stayed with us for one night. He had almost nothing. But he shared his food. He helped my mother. I asked him why. He told me." She smiled through distant memories. "Kindness doesn't become smaller when you give it away." Kael lowered his eyes. Wise words. Words worthy of a king. Yet spoken by an unknown traveler. "What happened to him?" "I never saw him again. But I've never forgotten." Kael looked at her with quiet admiration. Perhaps one small act truly could change someone's entire life. Perhaps that was exactly what had happened to Lira. And now, she was unknowingly changing his. Neither of them noticed the dark figures hiding between the trees. Selene's spies watched every step, every smile, every conversation. One quietly whispered, "This is becoming dangerous." The lady was right. The beggar trusts her. The second spy nodded. And she trusts him. "We should report immediately." They disappeared into the growing darkness. Miles away, inside Luna Manor, Selene stood before the fireplace. The spies knelt. "My lady." The Omega defended him publicly. Selene's face hardened. "In front of witnesses?" "Yes. And they continue spending every evening together." Silence filled the room. Finally, Selene spoke. "If that beggar is hiding something, I'll uncover it." She slowly turned toward the fire. "And if that Omega continues attracting attention." A cold smile spread across her face. "I'll make sure the entire pack turns against her." Outside, the first snowflakes of another storm began falling. Neither Lira nor Kael knew that the quiet days were over. The true test was only beginning. The harvest festival arrived beneath a sky filled with silver lanterns. For one night each winter, the Silver Crest Pack forgot its hardships and covered the village with music, banners, and bright firelight. Long wooden tables stretched across the square. Hunters roasted fresh meat over open flames. Children laughed as they ran between dancing wolves. From a distance, the celebration looked beautiful. But beauty often hid sharp teeth. Lira stood near the edge of the square carrying a basket of clean dishes from the kitchens. She had worked since dawn and earned only a few copper coins, yet she still smiled whenever Finn tugged excitedly at her sleeve. "Look." Finn pointed toward the center stage where musicians played lively songs. "Can we stay a little longer?" Lira brushed his hair back gently. "Only for a little while." She looked around carefully. The rich nobles wore fine fur cloaks and sparkling jewelry. Omegas like her stayed near the edges, careful not to draw attention. Across the square, the old beggar watched quietly from the shadows. Kael had spent the entire day observing the festival. Wealth flowed everywhere. Food overflowed from tables. Yet he had already noticed servants eating scraps behind tents while nobles wasted enough bread to feed entire families. His jaw tightened beneath the disguise. The pack called itself honorable. Tonight, he would learn how deep the rot truly ran. A sudden scream cut through the music. "My jewels!" Every head turned. Lunar Selene stood beside the central stage, one hand pressed dramatically to her chest. Her golden necklace was gone. The matching ceremonial jewels that marked her authority had vanished. Gasps spread through the crowd. "Seal the square!" Guards rushed into position. Selene's eyes swept across the gathered wolves before stopping on Lira. "Too quickly. Far too quickly. You." Selene said coldly. "Where were you?" Lira blinked in confusion. "I was working in the kitchens." "Convenient." The crowd began whispering. "She's poor. Maybe she stole them. Those jewels could feed her for years." Finn grabbed Lyra's hand. "She didn't do it." Selene ignored him. "Search her cabin." Lyra's face paled. "My lady, I swear. If you are innocent, you have nothing to fear." The words sounded calm, but the smile in Selene's eyes was not. Snow crunched beneath heavy boots as guards marched toward the lonely cabin. Villagers followed behind them like a hungry pack scenting blood. Kael walked silently among the crowd, every instinct warning him that something was wrong. When they reached the cabin, guards tore through the tiny home. They opened cupboards, emptied drawers, threw blankets onto the floor. Finn tried to stop them. "Don't break our things." A guard shoved him aside. Lira immediately caught the boy before he fell. "Easy, Finn." Then one guard shouted, "I found something." He held up a small velvet pouch. Inside, golden jewels glittered in the firelight. The crowd erupted. "She stole them." "I knew it." "Thief." Lira stared at the pouch as if it were a snake. "I've never seen that before." Selene stepped forward slowly. "And yet it was hidden beneath your bed." Lira looked around desperately. No one believed her. No one wanted to. Because poor wolves were easier to blame, guards seized Lyra's arms. Finn burst into tears. "Let her go. She didn't do it." He tried to pull the guards away, but one soldier pushed him back. Lira immediately twisted toward him. "Don't touch him." Even now, she worried more about Finn than herself. Kael felt his wolf growl beneath the disguise. One command from him could stop everything. One word. But he forced himself to remain still. Not yet. He needed the truth fully exposed. As they dragged Lira through the village, insults followed like stones. "Dirty Omega." "She fooled us." "Greed always shows eventually." Some threw snow. Others laughed. Finn ran beside her, crying so hard he could barely breathe. "Lira, please say something." She looked down at him with tears shining in her eyes. "Listen to me. I did not steal anything. Do you believe me?" Finn nodded fiercely. "Always." She smiled through her tears. "Then that's enough." Night fell as the entire pack gathered in the great square. Torches burned against the dark sky. Lira stood alone before the crowd, her wrists bound with rough rope. Finn tried to reach her, but guards held him back. Selene stepped onto the raised platform. "The evidence is clear." The stolen jewels were found in the Omega's cabin. The crowd murmured in agreement. Kael stood near the back, hidden beneath his hood. He watched every face. Not one elder asked for an investigation. Not one noble questioned the evidence. Judgment had already been decided. Because Lira was poor. Because she was an Omega. Because the powerful had spoken. Selene raised her voice. Lira of the Outer District, do you confess? Silence. Then Lira lifted her head. Her voice trembled, but it did not break. No, I will not confess to a lie. A wave of angry whispers rolled through the square. Selene's eyes narrowed. Even now you refuse. I refuse to say I stole what I did not take. Kael felt something shift inside him. Most wolves would have surrendered under this pressure. Most would have begged. Lira stood trembling before hundreds of hostile eyes and still chose truth. His respect for her deepened again. Selene turned toward the elders. Then we proceed to judgment. Several elders nodded without hesitation. Finn screamed. No. He broke free from a guard and ran toward Lira. Soldiers moved to stop him. Before they could grab the child, Lira stepped forward as far as her ropes allowed. You will not touch him. The entire square fell silent. Her voice was no longer soft. It was fierce. Protective. Fearless. For one heartbeat, even the guards hesitated. Kael's eyes locked onto hers. She was terrified. He could smell it. Yet she still stood between danger and a child. That was not weakness. That was courage. And for the first time since arriving in Silver Crest, the Alpha King's patience began to crack. Because if this pack condemned the one wolf who had shown true kindness, then the test was nearly over. The great bell of Silver Crest rang 3 long times. Its deep voice echoed through every street, every home, and every corner of the village. Everyone knew what those bells meant. A public trial. Within minutes, wolves poured into the central square. Merchants abandoned their stalls. Hunters returned from the forest. Elders left their meeting hall. Even children climbed onto fences to see what would happen. At the center of the square stood the ancient judgment stone. It had witnessed generations of trials. Today, an innocent Omega stood before it. Lyra's wrists were tied with rough rope. Her hands trembled from the cold, but her head remained high. Finn clung desperately to her side until a guard pulled him away. No. He struggled with all his strength. She didn't do anything. Lira. His cries broke the hearts of a few wolves. But not enough. Most of the crowd simply looked away. Others whispered cruel words. I always knew something was wrong with her. You can't trust poor wolves. They smile while stealing. Every sentence struck like another stone. Yet Lira remained silent. She knew arguing with people who had already decided her guilt would change nothing. Across the square, the old beggar stood among the crowd. His weathered hands rested upon his wooden staff. His face remained calm. Only his eyes betrayed the storm hidden beneath the disguise. Kael watched everything. Every expression. Every whisper. Every coward hiding behind the safety of the crowd. His patience was growing thinner. Lunar Selene slowly climbed the stone platform. Her white cloak flowed behind her like fresh snow. She raised one elegant hand. Instant silence followed. My people. Her voice carried across the square. Today is a painful day. She sighed dramatically. I never wished for this. She looked toward Lira with carefully practiced disappointment. But no wolf. No matter how humble. No matter how innocent they appear. Can stand above our laws. The crowd nodded. Selene continued. My treasured moonstone necklace was stolen. The evidence was found. The thief stands before you. She pointed directly at Lira. Gasps spread through the crowd once more. Lira stepped forward. I didn't steal anything. Her voice shook slightly, but it remained clear. I swear on my parents' memory. I'm innocent. Selene tilted her head. Then explain why my jewels were hidden beneath your floor. I don't know. They weren't mine. You expect us to believe someone placed them there? Yes. Laughter erupted across the square. Several nobles clapped sarcastically. One warrior shouted, "Convenient." Another laughed. Perhaps the birds carried them there. The crowd roared with laughter. Finn covered his ears. He couldn't bear hearing them mock the only person who had ever loved him. One elder slowly stood. His beard reached almost to his waist. "We have seen the evidence. There is no need for further discussion." Another elder nodded. "The punishment should be exile." A third elder added, "Permanent exile. No wolf who steals from the Luna deserves to remain within our borders." The crowd quickly agreed. "Exile. Send her away. She brought shame to Silver Crest." The voices grew louder, more hateful, more cruel. Lira looked around the square. Not one familiar face defended her. Not the merchant she had helped. Not the old wolf whose grain she had carried. Not the servant she had protected. Fear had silenced them all. For a brief moment, sadness crossed her face. Not because they hated her, but because kindness had been forgotten so quickly. Suddenly, a quiet voice interrupted the crowd. "May I speak?" Everyone turned. The old beggar slowly stepped forward. Some wolves laughed immediately. "The beggar? What does he know?" Kael bowed respectfully toward the elders. "I ask only for fairness." One elder frowned. "This matter does not concern you." Kael remained calm. "Justice concerns everyone." Selene's eyes narrowed. "And what wisdom does a homeless traveler offer us?" Kael looked directly at her. "I have walked through many kingdoms. I have learned that evidence can be planted. I have learned that fear often hides the truth." The square became strangely quiet. Some wolves exchanged nervous glances. Selene smiled coldly. "So now you accuse our guards of lying?" "I accuse no one. I only ask for a proper investigation." One elder slammed his staff against the stone. "Enough." Another shouted, "You dare question our judgment?" Kael answered calmly, "I question only haste." The elder sneered. "A beggar has no right to question this council." The crowd laughed again. Someone threw a rotten apple. It struck Kael's shoulder. Another tossed snow. Children copied the adults. Within seconds, the old traveler stood covered in snow while laughter echoed around him. Kael never moved. Never raised his voice. Never revealed his anger. Lira suddenly stepped forward. "Stop." The laughter slowly faded. She looked toward the crowd. "He only asked for fairness. You don't have to insult him." A warrior scoffed. "You're defending him." She nodded. "Yes. He has shown me more kindness than most of you." The warrior stepped closer. "Perhaps you're partners." Another wolf laughed. "Maybe they planned the theft together." The insults became even worse. Lira ignored every one of them. She quietly stood beside the old beggar. If they wished to mock him, they would mock her too. Kael looked at her from the corner of his eye. She had nothing left. No reputation. No safety. No future. Yet she still chose to stand beside someone weaker than herself. His respect deepened once again. Selene's smile slowly disappeared. This wasn't happening the way she wanted. She wanted Lira broken. Begging. Crying. Instead, the Omega stood taller with every insult. That irritated her. "Enough." Selene raised her hand. "The council has reached its decision." She looked directly at Lira. "You are hereby sentenced to permanent exile. You will leave Silver Crest before sunset. You may never return." A loud cheer exploded through the square. Finn screamed, "No!" He broke free from the guard and ran toward Lira. The little pup wrapped both arms around her waist. "I'm coming with you." Lira immediately knelt before him. Tears filled her eyes. "No! You belong here. I belong with you. I won't leave you." The entire square watched the heartbreaking scene. Even some warriors quietly lowered their heads. Lira gently wiped Finn's tears. "Listen to me. You have to be brave." "I don't want to be brave. I want you." She hugged him tightly. "So do I." Her voice almost broke. Selene watched impatiently. "Take her." 2 guards stepped forward. They grabbed Lyra's arms once again. Finn tried to stop them. A guard roughly pushed him backward. The little pup fell into the snow. "Lira." Without thinking, Lira twisted free just enough to kneel beside him. She wrapped her body around Finn protectively. "You will not touch him." Her voice echoed across the square. Strong. Fearless. "You can punish me. You can exile me. But you will not hurt him." Silence fell. Even Kael felt something shift inside him. She never begged for herself. Only for the child. His wolf growled deep within his soul. The sound almost escaped his throat. Years of discipline barely held it back. Selene noticed the old beggar's clenched fists. "Interesting. Very interesting." She smiled. "Throw them both outside the gates. The beggar can freeze beside her." Several guards laughed. They reached toward Kael. One grabbed his shoulder roughly. Another shoved him toward the snow. The crowd watched. Waiting. Watching 2 helpless outcasts disappear forever. Kael slowly lifted his eyes. For the first time, golden light flickered deep inside them. Only for a heartbeat. Then it vanished. No one noticed. Except one person. Selene. Her smile slowly faded. Something about that old man felt terrifying. But before she could understand why, a panicked scream echoed from the far side of the village. "Fire! Fire!" The orphan house. Everyone turned at once. Thick black smoke rose into the winter sky. Bright orange flames burst through the roof of the village orphanage. Children's terrified screams filled the air. The trial was instantly forgotten. The crowd ran toward the fire. Lira looked up in horror. Without waiting for permission, she broke into a run. Straight toward the burning building. And the old beggar quietly followed behind her. The test was about to change forever. The first scream shattered the afternoon like a bolt of lightning. "Fire! The orphan house is burning." For one frozen heartbeat, no one moved. Then panic swept across Silver Crest. The crowd that had gathered for Lyra's trial scattered in every direction. Merchants abandoned their stalls. Mothers grabbed their children. Warriors rushed toward the thick black smoke rising above the rooftops. The cheerful sounds of the harvest festival vanished. Now, only fear remained. Bright orange flames burst through the roof of the orphan house, sending burning pieces of wood crashing into the snowy street. Thick smoke climbed into the sky, turning the clear winter afternoon dark. Children screamed from inside. Someone shouted, "They're trapped." Another cried, "The stairs have collapsed." Women covered their mouths in horror. Several wolves began crying. But no one entered. The fire was already too strong. Lyra's heart stopped. She stared at the burning building. She knew those children. Many of them had eaten the bread she secretly shared whenever she could. Some had no parents. Some had no names anyone remembered. But every one of them deserved to live. She looked toward the doorway. Flames poured through it like hungry wolves. Heat pushed everyone backward. A warrior stepped forward, then quickly retreated. "It's impossible. The roof is collapsing." Another shook his head. "We're too late." An elder lowered his eyes. "We can't save them." Their words echoed through the crowd. Too late. Impossible. Can't. Lira heard only one thing. Children were still inside. Finn tugged desperately on her sleeve. "Lira. Don't go." She looked down at him. His eyes were filled with terror. She gently held his face. "Listen to me. You stay behind everyone. But. No. I need you to promise me." He shook his head, already crying. "I don't want you to leave." She smiled through tears. "I'm coming back. You promise." She hesitated for only a second, then nodded. I promise. It was the same promise she had made every day. She prayed she could keep it. Without another word, Lira turned toward the flames. A guard grabbed her arm. Where do you think you're going? There are children inside. You'll die. Then I won't die standing here. She pulled free. The guard reached again. You are under arrest. Lira looked directly into his eyes. I can face punishment later. But I won't let them face this alone. Before anyone could stop her, she ran straight toward the burning orphanage. The crowd gasped. What is she doing? She's crazy. She's only an Omega. Even Selene stared in disbelief. She had expected fear, not courage. Standing among the crowd, the old beggar watched silently. Kael's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed at him to reveal himself. One command. One burst of alpha power. And everyone would obey. But he remained still. Not because he didn't care. Because this moment belonged to Lira. The truth of her heart had to be seen by everyone. No titles. No witnesses chosen in advance. Only courage. Raw and undeniable. Lira wrapped a wet cloth around her mouth. She kicked open the damaged front door. Smoke exploded into her face. The heat stole her breath instantly. The wooden floor creaked beneath her boots. Somewhere upstairs, a child screamed, "Help!" Lira looked toward the collapsing staircase. Half of it had already burned away. Flames climbed the walls. The ceiling groaned. Every second mattered. She whispered softly, "Please. Just hold on." Then she climbed. Outside, the warriors argued. "We need water. The roof won't last. No one can survive in there." Kael looked toward them. "So why are you standing here?" One warrior answered bitterly, "We'd be killed." Kael's eyes remained fixed on the fire. "And yet." She entered. The warriors lowered their heads. None answered. Inside, the smoke became thicker. Lira dropped to her knees to breathe beneath it. She crawled toward the frightened voices. "Where are you?" A tiny hand appeared beneath a fallen beam. "I'm here." Lira hurried forward. A little girl no older than 5 sat trapped beneath broken furniture. Her face was covered with soot. She was shaking uncontrollably. "Lira." "I was scared." Lira smiled gently. "I'm here now. You'll be okay." She pushed against the heavy wooden shelf. It barely moved. Again. Nothing. Again. Her arms trembled. Finally, the shelf shifted just enough. The little girl crawled free. Lira immediately picked her up. "Hold on tight." The child buried her face against Lira's shoulder. "I don't want to die." "You won't. I promise." The staircase collapsed behind them. Their only escape disappeared beneath flames. Lira looked around desperately. A nearby window. She kicked it. Once. Twice. On the third strike, glass exploded outward. Cold winter air rushed inside. Outside, the crowd saw movement. Someone's there. "It's Lira." A warrior climbed onto a wagon beneath the window. "Jump." Lira handed the little girl through the opening first. Strong hands caught her safely. Cheers erupted. One child. She saved one. The little girl cried. Lira's still inside. The cheers immediately stopped. Smoke swallowed the window again. Kael closed his eyes. His wolf growled. She had come out. She could stay outside. Instead, he watched her disappear back into the flames. His fists tightened around the old wooden staff. "No." He whispered quietly. "What are you doing?" Inside the orphanage, the heat became unbearable. Burning beams crashed around her. The air was almost impossible to breathe. Then, another cry. A little boy trapped beneath a broken table. She hurried toward him. "It's okay. I'm here." He clung desperately to her. "My brother." "He's upstairs." Lyra's heart sank. How many? 3. 3 more children. Still inside. She looked toward the burning staircase. There was almost nothing left. Every sensible thought told her to leave. She had already saved one life. No one would blame her. But then she remembered something. The night she gave away her last piece of bread. Kindness means nothing if you choose it only when it's easy. She took a deep breath, held the little boy close, and climbed toward the second floor. Outside, the flames grew even larger. A section of the roof crashed inward. The crowd screamed. She'll never come out. Finn stood frozen. His tiny hands shook. He whispered through tears, "Please come back. Please." Kael stared at the burning building. For the first time since arriving at Silver Crest, fear entered the Alpha King's heart. Not fear for himself. Fear of losing the woman who had unknowingly changed him forever. The next few moments would decide everything. The second floor shook beneath Lyra's feet. Every step echoed with the terrifying sound of cracking wood. Flames raced along the walls like living creatures, swallowing everything they touched. Thick black smoke burned her eyes until tears streamed down her face. Still, she kept climbing. The frightened little boy clung tightly to her shoulder. "My brother," he whispered through sobs. "Please don't leave him." Lyra gently squeezed his hand. "I won't." The floor groaned beneath them. A burning beam crashed only inches away, sending sparks flying across the hallway. She shielded the child with her own body. "It's okay. I've got you." Outside, panic continued spreading. Villagers formed a line, desperately passing buckets of water from the frozen well. But every bucket seemed useless. The flames only grew larger. One warrior stared helplessly at the burning building. "We're losing it." Another looked toward the roof. Nobody could still be alive inside. Kael never looked away. His sharp senses could still hear faint heartbeats through the roar of the fire. 3. No. 4 children remained trapped. And Lira was with them. His fingers tightened around his wooden staff. His alpha instincts screamed louder than ever before. Reveal yourself. Save them. End the test. But something inside him whispered another truth. She had chosen this. Not because anyone ordered her. Not because she wanted praise. She simply refused to abandon innocent lives. Inside the orphanage, Lira reached the second floor. Smoke covered everything. She could barely see. "Can anyone hear me?" A tiny voice answered. "Here." She followed the sound into a small bedroom. 3 frightened children huddled together beneath a broken bed frame. The oldest couldn't have been more than 9. The youngest looked barely 4. Their faces were black with soot. The smallest girl cried uncontrollably. "I want my mommy." Lyra's heart broke. She knelt before them. "Listen to me. I'm getting all of you out." The oldest boy shook his head. "The stairs. They're gone." Lira looked toward the hallway. He was right. The staircase had completely collapsed. Only burning ruins remained. For one terrifying second, she had no answer. Then she looked toward the window. Too high. Too dangerous. But it was their only chance. She tore strips from her own cloak. Then from the blankets lying nearby. Quickly she tied them together into one long rope. The oldest boy watched. "Will it hold?" "It has to." The walls trembled violently. A loud crack echoed above them. The roof was beginning to fail. "Hurry." Lira tied one end around a heavy wooden support. She tested it. It barely held. Then she looked at the children. "You first." The oldest shook his head. "No. The little ones." Lira smiled softly. "You're very brave." Together they carefully lowered the youngest girl through the broken window. Outside, a villager looked up. "Someone's there." A warrior rushed beneath the window with several others. "Catch her." The little girl slipped. Strong hands caught her safely. Cheers exploded through the crowd. "Another one." She saved another child. Finn looked up with tears in his eyes. Lira, please come down. But instead, another child appeared. Then another. One after another. Lira lowered each frightened child toward waiting hands below. Every successful rescue filled the crowd with hope. The same wolves who had called her a thief only minutes earlier now prayed for her survive. Selene stood frozen. This wasn't supposed to happen. The crowd wasn't supposed to admire Lira. They were supposed to hate her. Every child saved made the Omega stronger. Every cheer made Selene weaker. Her jaw tightened. No, she whispered. This cannot happen. Only one child remained upstairs. The little boy who had begged Lira to find his brother. Now both brothers stood safely together. Lira looked around. Everyone was out. She sighed with relief. Then, a loud crash echoed above her. The ceiling collapsed. Burning timber fell directly toward her. She jumped aside. Too late. A heavy beam struck her shoulder. She cried out as she fell to the floor. The room exploded into flames around her. Outside, the crowd gasped. The window disappeared behind thick smoke. Someone screamed. She's still inside. Finn's face turned pale. No. No. He broke free from the villagers holding him back. Lira. He ran toward the burning building. Kael moved instantly. Even in disguise, he reached Finn before the child reached the flames. The little pup struggled desperately. Let me go. I have to help her. Kael knelt before him. His voice remained calm. You can't save her. Finn sobbed uncontrollably. Then she'll die alone. Those words struck Kael harder than any weapon. She'll die alone. No. Not while he still breathed. Inside. Lira tried to stand. Pain shot through her shoulder. The burning beam trapped one of her legs beneath its weight. She pushed. Nothing. Again. It didn't move. Smoke filled her lungs. Her vision blurred. For the first time, fear entered her heart. Not fear of dying. Fear of breaking her promise. She had promised Finn she would come home. A quiet tear rolled down her cheek. I'm sorry. She whispered. I tried. The flames surrounded her from every side. There was nowhere left to run. Outside, Kael slowly closed his eyes. His patience had reached its end. He had watched enough. He had seen greed, cruelty, cowardice, and finally, true courage. The test was over. He slowly removed his trembling hand from the old wooden staff. Golden light began glowing beneath the torn sleeves of the beggar's robe. The snow around his feet started melting. The air itself seemed to tremble. Nearby wolves turned in confusion. What? What is happening? A powerful wind swept across the village. The clouds above the orphanage began swirling. Every wolf instinctively stepped backward. Deep beneath the disguise, the Alpha King awakened. Kael looked toward the burning building one final time. His voice was no louder than a whisper. Lira. You've done enough. Now. It's my turn. Golden energy burst through the cracks in his disguise. The old beggar disappeared beneath a storm of brilliant light. The entire village shielded their eyes. No one understood what they were witnessing. But every wolf could feel it. A power unlike anything they had ever known had finally revealed itself.